This is the Comics Alternative Kickstarter, Discovering SCI, the Jewish Comics Anthology, Volume 2. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Kickstarter. This is our second episode, and for those of you who did not join us last week, this is a brand new series with the Comics Alternative. It will be coming out every Saturday morning. And on this series, the Comics Alternative Kickstarter, I will talk with a creator or a creative team that is trying to crowdsource or kickstart on Kickstarter a comics-related project. The vast majority of people who create comics and have campaigns on Kickstarter are either people who would self-publish or smaller presses who really need this kind of crowdfunding exposure in order to help get their ideas off the ground. And we thought that that would be perfect for the Comics Alternative because we privilege self-publishers, smaller presses. We're definitely not into mainstream superheroes. And so we thought, or I thought, why not do a show devoted to Kickstarter projects that have the creators wanting to make comics? So on this second episode, I am pleased to be talking with Andy Stanleigh and Stephen Bergson. They are behind the Kickstarter project SCI, the Jewish Comics Anthology, Volume 2. Guys, welcome to the Comics Alternative Kickstarter.
Thank you very much, Derek. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah. And Stephen, welcome back because you were with us for a special roundtable discussion on Jewish comics about, 3 years ago, I think it was.
I think so. Great to be back.
Yeah, and in fact, I think that's an interesting segue into your Kickstarter project that's currently going on, because when you were here on the roundtable, you were talking about something that you had just recently published, and that was an edited collection, the first volume of the Jewish Comics Anthology. And now we have this second one, but this time you're with Alternate History Comics. And so you guys are working on this together. So in terms of introducing this to our listening audience, sounding like a radio guy here, how would you describe this project, SCI, the Jewish Comics Anthology, Volume 2?
I think Andy's the better one to describe it.
Okay. Don't everybody talk at once. The pitch is we've got 18 short stories in this book. It's going to be around 200 pages. And what we're doing is we're taking, similar to the Volume 1 had, all the ancient folk tales and myths from Hebrew culture, just interpreted in comic book format. But what we're doing now is we're taking even some of the older tales and even some of the newer interpretation stories, fables, but we are rocketing them straight into the future. So every story is going to be an ancient tale, but transformed into some exciting sci-fi visions of the future.
I would just follow up by saying that with the first volume and with the second one as well, in some ways with things like the stories from the Talmud, I see it as a kind of midrash. And for those listeners who may not be familiar with Jewish midrash, this is the Jewish equivalent of what we call backstory, where if you have a Secret Origins comic, like they have from DC, where they take a story that's been told over and over and over again the same way, some writer decides, well, let's add a few pages to the beginning and talk about what was missed before Mon-El rocketed Superman, his son, to Earth. Or let's add some details to the end, or let's talk about the stuff that's kind of in between, where we're taking old Jewish tales and putting them in a new environment and maybe adding some details that could have been but weren't in the original story.
Mm-hmm. Let's give Wolverine bone claws.
And I see on your Kickstarter page that you guys have quite an impressive lineup of contributors, the creators that you list here. And I'm sure there are going to be more because you even list and more. So there may be some that you're lining up still. But tell us about getting some of these contributors.
Well, I mean, we've been very fortunate that we've worked with these contributors on our other books, especially the 2 volumes of Moonshot, the Indigenous Comics Collection. We also have the upcoming Mark Twain's Niagara graphic novel. So in one form or another, we've worked with a good portion of these people. So they've been fantastic to work with. They love, our books. The AH Comics sort of moniker is, cultural stories, that really get the community behind it. So, I mean, and, at the same time, there's a few people on here that, Bill Sankovich, for example, I wouldn't have even in my wildest dreams thought that we'd be able to hire him to work on this book, but he's all for the project and very generously agreed to work with us. So, I mean, it's super exciting and fantastic to have somebody of his caliber who's going to be contributing.
Right, and I see you have other names: Ty Templeton, David Mack, and Trina Robbins is a big get as well.
Yeah, Trina Robbins. We with Stephen, who found a story that Sharon Rudall and Trina Robbins had written and illustrated, decades ago. So we had actually reprinted that version in volume 1 of the anthology. So through that connection, I was able to contact Trina again, and we said, "Hey, you want to write something new for us?"
Well, let's talk a little bit about the press. And Andy, are you the publisher or editor or all of the above of Alternate History Comics?
With Alternate History Comics, I am the publisher. Yep, I own and operate the company.
Okay.
But my background is also as a writer and an artist. And personally, I am writing and illustrating one of the stories that's going to be in this book as my selfish contribution.
So, but you're publishing it, and Stephen is editing it as he did that first volume.
Yes, yeah, and we published the first volume too with Stephen.
Okay, and Stephen, how was this different in terms of compiling everything, pulling it together from your first volume?
Some of the work is the same. As Andy said, this one will be all new material, so we're not reprinting anything this time, and we're bringing in some artists that we're keeping some of the same artists that we had in the first volume who want to contribute again, but we're also bringing in new people like Ty Templeton and Bill Sankovich. And something that's important for me, but it's not really a prerequisite, but just makes me feel good working on the project, is having a number of women represented, having a number of Canadian talent, because we're going to be selling it on both sides of the border and other countries if they're interested too. But for some of the Americans, they may not be as familiar with some of the Canadian talent we've got here, the caliber that we have up here, including Andy, of course. But, there was someone from the Moonshot collection. I hadn't heard of her name before, but she's excellent. Maybe.
Now, was it easier, Stephen, to compile this second volume having done the first, or was it, let's say, just as equally challenging?
For me, it was more challenging because...
more challenging. Okay.
It was more challenging to me because of the time frame, because when I was doing the other one, I wasn't working with Andy at the beginning, and I was just kind of casually at my own pace, just kind of putting pieces together and networking to find writers and artists who I could work with and I wanted to work with. But this was like, Andy said, at a certain point, well, I would like you to have a proposal of, the stories you want to include in this by this date. And I'm a little short of artists. Can you recommend anyone by this date? And, it's a little more pressure, but, we've managed so far. It's turned out okay.
Got to keep you on your toes, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, guys, tell me a little about your rewards level. So, okay, someone is interested in this. Let's say they're listening to this podcast episode right now, and they go, this does sound fascinating. I'm going to check it out. They go to Kickstarter. They put in Jewish Comics Anthology in a search, and they come up with your project, and they're wondering, how am I going to support this? What am I going to get? What should I give? And what will I get in return? So tell us a little bit about the rewards levels.
Currently we have almost 24 reward levels. We're adding more. Almost tomorrow morning. So before this podcast goes live, there's going to be even more different book reward levels. Anything from, every little bit counts. If somebody wants to throw in $2, hey, throw in $2. But for example, starting at the $5 pledge, you get a set of 5. We've got high quality glossy bookmarks, and so they've all got exclusive artwork on them from the book. You can get digital editions. You can get a copy of the softcover book. You can get an exclusive copy of the book in hardcover, and this is something that we do just for Kickstarter backers. So the hardcover editions are not sold in stores ever. So if anybody wants to grab themselves a limited edition hardcover that has some of the fantastic artists who normally don't do any artwork outside of their Marvel and DC contracts, so this is one of the only ways to get some of that exclusive stuff. We have signed art prints. At the higher levels, we have some original artwork from legends like Michael Netzer, who's one of the Silver Age Batman and Superman artists. We even have original textile art from award-winning Jewish artists. We've got retail packages. We've got reward backer levels for all budgets and all interests.
Can I just add my two of the reward levels that I'm most interested in? There's one where we offer the soft cover of Volume 1 and Volume 2. So for people that missed out on the last Kickstarter and can't find it in the stores, here's a chance for them to get both volumes at once.
That's a popular one, yeah.
Yeah, and at the 1800 level, which is a nice Jewish number, you can be a character in one of the stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Stephen, what you were referring to, the first 2 volume softcover, people can back your project and get those 2 books at the at least Canadian $50 level. And you write here that it's about, I guess, $40 American dollars. So, and I'm glad that you put that because, sometimes with Kickstarters from Canada, they don't have the U.S. dollar equivalent. So that makes it easy, for us dumb United States citizens who can't do easy math. Now, if someone already has, let's say, the first volume and they want this second volume in soft cover, then they could back that for 20 Canadian dollars, which is about 16 American. And Andy, you were mentioning the hardcover. That comes in at $60 Canadian, but about 48 US dollars.
Right.
But there, as you mentioned, many more levels there. But, this gives the listener a sense of where to begin. So when they find your Kickstarter page, they can decide, do I just want the book? Do I want it in softcover or hardcover? Do I want it along with the first volume? Or do I want some of the other things in addition to, let's say, the hardcover or softcover, digital copy, and other things, right? So the various frills that you can get. Now,
exactly.
Right now, as we're recording this, which is on November 2nd, I see that you're at $9,208, and your goal is $40,514, and you have an impressive 223 backers. But you've got not quite a month and a half to go, right?
Yeah, we've got about 45 days to go. So we're almost at the 25% funding as we are recording this podcast. I think it's 23%. Mm-hmm. And we're about 25% of the way there. So, you cannot argue with those results. We're extremely happy. They're right on track to make its goal, which is great.
Yeah. And who do you think that what kind of reading audience do you feel that you're primarily tapping into? I mean, who are the backers? Have you gotten a sense of the people who are contributing? Have they contacted you?
Some of them have contacted us. I know a lot of them are backers of our previous campaigns, Moonshot, the Indigenous Comics Collection, which is great to see because it's so nice to see kind of members of the Kickstarter community come together for these community-based projects. I mean, we're going to have over 30 writers and artists contribute to this book, and to have so many backers who have jumped on board already, it's just really, really sweet.
I'd just like that, as a librarian, what I'd like to see happen is that Jewish readers who may read novels, who may read plays, that might think that comics are just junk literature, that they approach this, take a chance on it and see, wow, comics can be has so much potential. And that comic readers who maybe don't know that much about the Jewish stories, see someone like Ty Templeton or Bill Sienkiewicz and think, I'll give this a shot, and then come to learn about the Jewish stories that they never heard of before.
Yeah, and it's and I think Stephen will back me up in here. One of the great things is it's not just an all ages audience, but it's called the Jewish Comics Anthology, but you're not going to find any heavy faith-based or religious, text or stories in here. So the stories would be of interest to readers of all walks of life from anywhere in the earth. So they're basically just really great, interesting stories that happen to be based on some ancient folktales from Hebrew culture. So, and like Stephen said, it's a great way to learn about some of the things that are that are talked about in the Jewish community from ages old, from hundreds of years ago to thousands of years ago.
Yeah, we're definitely not talking about chick tracts here.
No.
Thank goodness, although those are amusing in their own way. Actually, if someone wanted to compile a complete collection of chick tracts and try to kickstart that, I definitely check that out. So, yeah, before we go, let's mention that, people can find out about this Kickstarter by going to Kickstarter and looking for Jewish Comics Collection. But they can also, sorry to interrupt, they can also just type in SCI, and this project will be one of the first that pops up. We were awarded by Kickstarter as one of their projects we love. So there'll be a nice purple heart on the photo. And if you just type in SCI, this will come up, which is great. Okay, well, that's good. I was also going to recommend that our listeners check out Alternate History Comics website. So they can do that by going to AH Comics. That's one word, ahcomics.com. And on your front page, I see that you do have a link for information about this Kickstarter project. Exactly. So you've got 45 days to go as we record this. I wish you the best of luck. Again, I encourage all of our listeners to check this out on Kickstarter and also check out the Alternate History Comics website, ahcomics.com. Andy, Stephen, thank you very much for being on this, our second episode of the Comics Alternative Kickstarter series. This was an honor. Thank you so much, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.